I should have done better, I should have been a better mom, I should have made better choices.
So Heather is actually a counselor here and applying to a master's program to be a licensed counselor. Super excited about that.
Very excited.
But we were kind of talking a little bit before that, and I think the best counselors are ones that have they're successfully working through their mental health journey, right? We talk about mental health, and I think sometimes it gets confused with mental illness, and then we want to kind of separate ourselves from that. But you and I, we are all on a mental health journey, and you have been working with the Mentally Strong Method with your clients, and kind of having some trouble in the identify and organize.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to actually start with the identify and organize. And I think the best way to learn is to do yourself, right? So you've done some of these maps on yourself, I'm assuming?
Couple.
And you've already revealed that you've got some trauma. And we don't have to, and this is the greatest part about the Mentally Strong Method, we don't have to get into the details of the trauma. But could you use some words to identify some of your trauma?
Shame,
Okay.
fear, guilt,
Okay. That's the feelings that it causes, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it's still impacting you today.
mostly yes.
Yeah. Okay. What are some negative thoughts? Because these sound like negative thoughts to me.
Yeah, the same. But mostly like with the negative thoughts is it was your fault.
Mm-hmm.
You stayed.
Okay. So what kind of, so
Yeah.
we're going to put that as a behavior or choice, right? But what kind of person stays?
Weak.
So that's the actual negative thought. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to actually erase this because that is what the trauma did to you. That's not the trauma, right?
Okay.
So in trauma, we want to process and release. Okay? And whatever this is, we're just going to, is it multiple small trauma? Is it a couple big
Two
traumas?
bigger, yeah, two big ones.
We're just going to call it 2 big T's, okay? And this is the other great thing about the method. We don't have to get into the details. You know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that there was a choice that you made in there that you believe says something about you, right? What about shame and guilt? Where would shame and guilt be?
Negative thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and core connections.
Well, let's talk about what kind of person is weak, shameful, guilty.
I would say bad one, but
That might be the core connection.
okay.
Do you see how you can separate the negative thought from the core connection? Because these are things that you can probably talk yourself out of.
Right.
When you're, intellectually and you're therapeutically, but down in your core, and probably came from your childhood, of thinking that you're a bad person. Or if there's another word that's
Yeah.
more accurate, that's been there a long time.
I mean, I like to pretend that I'm not, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
See how that one, you can
Yeah,
clearly feel it's the button.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about, triggers are kind of the external things that are coming at us. But all of these things, negative thoughts and triggers, they can push those core buttons. And for you, it sounds like that core button is from childhood kind of thinking you are bad.
Mm.
And sometimes, and as someone who's studying therapy, like sometimes we make choices to confirm those core beliefs that we already have.
Right, like the second T goes along with the first T because of the core connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason we separate it is because if we had taken the time to map it all out and we've got all these lines, and that's how our brain looks. Like it's all connected and we are, it's too much to process at the same time. So we separate it and we go, okay, this is what the trauma did to me, or reinforce maybe what that was already even there. Like, let's talk about if we were to have done the whole map. Is there some traumas from childhood or these from childhood?
One's from childhood.
Okay. And then this one was the choice that you feel like, okay. And in your childhood, and I can talk to you like this because I know you're a counselor. I know that you're working on yourself. If I was working with someone who didn't know the method and wasn't familiar in this space, I would be back at that map and trying to help. But I think you get what you need to do. You're having trouble organizing it and making choices separate, because what happens when we enmesh these things together, it's hard to process and release. Because let's rate these. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolutely it's your fault, what would you rate that?
For the adult, I'd go an 8.
Okay. We're going to say adult, 8. Child?
0.
Okay. What about that you are a weak person?
I'd say at least a 6.
Okay. We'll put that one over here at 6. That shame and guilt, how much of that is really you?
I have a lot of that, so probably an 8 again.
Okay. And let's talk about anxieties. I'm assuming there's some anxieties there as well.
We could have started there and stayed there the whole time.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what you're anxious about.
My kids and any of this happening with them.
Okay. Rate that on a 0 to 10.
10. Because I've kind of already gone down that road with one of them.
Okay, so there's been something that's happened. Okay.
And then this affected my older kids. So that's a huge one too.
So do you feel like it was, so that's really guilt of a past decision, not a current decision?
But I feel it now because anytime they're unhappy or anytime they're upset or sad about something that happened, excuse me, then I'm like, it was my fault. I should have done better. I should have been a better mom. I should have made better choices.
So past choices, I would, because it's more cumulative, correct? Not just that one.
Yeah.
And how much anxiety does that cause you?
I'd give it a 10 too. That one's a big
So
one.
like you said, we should have started here.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, I mean, it goes along with my kids again, but I'm always worried about their future and like catastrophizing. Like if they get in a car, I'm like, something's going to happen, they're going to get in a car crash, stuff like that. So that's probably my other biggest one, other than like they're something from the past hurting them.
How much energy are you using in your anxiety?
Now, currently, I'd probably say about 30 to 40%.
Okay.
And it differs on each day.
But a lot of times that energy spills into this. Okay.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, this feeds this, this, reverts back to that. Okay. Any injustices you want to identify?
The 2 T's.
What about spiritual conflict?
I mean, I didn't really think so until you said it the other day at the meeting because of the why would it be okay for horrible things to happen. But I guess that is a spiritual conflict. Like, I've never really thought it with these two, but I did think it in that case, in this specific case.
And this is a good example of why I separate these things, because injustices are a part of life, and we can make choices here. So I give the example of my kids. They had this very rare neurodegenerative condition. I was actively involved in research when they were alive. And them having this ultra rare condition is definitely an injustice, right? And I could choose to make that my life fight. I have chosen I don't want anything to do with Derpla, right? And you have kind of, some people, let's say their child was killed by a drunk driver, and they spend their life doing education around drunk driving and things like that. So it's more of a practical social construct of what I want to do with this injustice. The spiritual conflict comes in we are spiritual beings. We have a connection outside of ourselves. For me, it was, I believed in a loving God that protects people, right? And he didn't protect my children. So that created this spiritual conflict. It's also an injustice, but the power of choice is different. And many people with a spiritual conflict just choose to say, oh, I don't believe in God anymore, right? I prayed. I've heard so many patients tell me, oh, I prayed when I was in the middle of this and God did not do anything. And so therefore there is no God, right? And so I have this as just a challenge of it's different than injustice. The things probably go in both areas, but what you do with it is different. This is more socially. So socially, you want to help people who've been through trauma, right? But you have to be successful in working through yours, right? But that's in this. So this is what you want to do with this. But right now, we need to focus on this so that when you get to that place, you're better prepared to help people with trauma. Spiritual conflict is that same trauma. I'm assuming that's... Tell me a little bit about the spiritual conflict specifically.
So it was a patient, and his story specifically, when we were talking about how we get through the trauma, because it was the trauma meeting, how we get through the trauma, and I said it had stuck with me because I didn't understand why he had to go through such horrible things. And then you made that comment about, so it's a spiritual conflict, and it hadn't registered, and then I was like, ding. But usually I always feel like I'm very spiritually connected.
Okay.
So it kind of got to me.
So so I'm using the right words. Do you call your spiritual relationship God? Do you have what?
Yeah, God.
Okay. So what kind of God, or what, this is where the conflict comes in, right? God allowed these two traumas to happen to you and allowed these horrible things to happen to your patient. But we're taught, or we believe, that God is what? Good.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is I never really thought about it with these two. It wasn't until it was with somebody else and it was magnified that it really hit.
Yeah. So how would you like to identify that spiritual conflict?
It's kind of hard to even put it in words because it's just a big question mark for me right now.
That's okay. Absolutely. It's what does that mean? It's, our spiritual relationship is so complex and so personal, and really is about our soul connection. And so many people want to put words to that, right? So what kind of things, as we talk about healing from your trauma and helping other people open this door of their spiritual journey? Because I think we kind of live in this culture where you either believe in this all perfect God and it's going to protect you, or you stop believing in God. Like, and we have a lot of patients who are just won't even talk about it. And I want to like open this door back up. There's such a strong connection between your spiritual health and your mental health.
Yeah.
So what could you do on your journey to begin? We're never going to have all the answers, right? But to strengthen that relationship or feel some sort of peace in this very broken world, right? And as a counselor, we actually hear a lot more than most people, right? Everybody else can just turn off the news or not watch that documentary, right? But we hear these stories over and over again all day.
I love it.
So we have to strengthen that to be able to, help people who've had that trauma.
I think something that's helped me with this is that this particular person is very spiritual as well. And so, and the person that he became is he's like a healer. He's very good with other people. So I understand that the situation needed to be what it needed to be so that he would be who he needed to be.
Boy, we're really talking in circles.
Yeah. I just don't want to give up
of course.
information.
Yeah, absolutely.
He became who he was because of his past, like most of us.
Yeah.
Like all of us. And
so
who he is a good person.
Yeah. So let's, I talk about this in the children's program of like stress is growth. And, but what does that mean for our spiritual relationship? Can we grow closer to God in these things? Because we typically, when God is not manifesting the way in which we think he should, it creates a conflict, right?
Right. And then comes here, because that was good with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't feel... I didn't lessen my spirituality after that conversation or after that meeting. There was just a big question mark. Like, do I have an issue with this? But I still, because I pray nightly, I have enormous amounts of gratitude towards them, and that seems to be great.
Gratitude is a way of kind of focusing on the positive rather than the negative. So gratitude is definitely a way to address both of these things, injustices and spiritual conflicts. But it doesn't always do much for this. And so you see how the importance of separating and practicing lots of these things, because you could be very grateful and still think that you're weak and a bad person, right?
Because this is like somebody else giving it.
Right. So you see how so a lot of people talk about gratitude and and that positive energy brings more blessings, right? But it's only going to help in these two areas, not going to help here. So this is, clearly making a choice to decrease how we talk to ourselves, like change how we talk to ourselves. And then you said there was some addiction stuff.
Yeah. Full disclosure, heroin addict for 5 years, almost 5 years. So, but in this, I still had full faith here because I knew this was my choice.
Because you were numbing.
Yeah. But thanks. Appreciate that. Gratitude. But I knew this was my choice. And it wasn't like, he put me in that situation.
Right. Yeah.
This one did. No.
So, right. But, what kind of person does that?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
feeding into
exactly.
this. So let's actually take it back. And I want to now, obviously, in your addiction, you were feeding into that, right? What about right now? What feeds into that core?
My anger.
Okay.
Anger towards my kid's dad, because I'm not very nice to him right now.
Okay. I do that too. Like when I'm mean to my husband, I feel like, oh, I'm such a bad person, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
then there's probably some shame and guilt here with the addiction?
yes.
Okay.
And some self-hate.
And do your kids know about this?
My older ones do.
Okay. And so, we talked about that anxiety of the kids and how these decisions have impacted them, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else in your life, like, kind of feed into that, I'm a bad person?
I'm sure there's tons, but
What about in your childhood?
cousin.
Okay. She told you that you were bad? Okay.
No, I was bad to her.
Oh, you were bad to her?
Yes.
Oh, we'll say mean. And so there's guilt there. And how is she today? Is she a good adult, a healthy person?
She works and she has a kid, but she's...
Do you have a relationship?
She's an alcoholic. Yeah, I do. A really
Okay.
good one with her, actually.
Okay.
But she's not so good because she has her own traumas.
Okay. You think you contributed to that?
Yeah, I do.
So we'll just say like kind of contributing to that trauma. Okay. Okay. What about with your family, your mom, your dad?
Sister. Oh, you had to mention mom. Sister and mom.
Okay.
I put sister up here because she's less.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about mom.
I haven't talked to mom in a year and a half now.
Okay. And why?
I feel like she abandoned us.
Okay.
She didn't do what moms are supposed to do. And
Okay.
she allowed one of the T's to happen, so...
How did she make you feel like a bad person?
Because she was like, here, I'm going to let it happen, so you must deserve it.
And I'm going to say that the trauma and the abandonment, right? You know, if you were deserving, then you wouldn't have been abandoned.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
If she really loved me, then I wouldn't have. Yep.
Yeah.
And then sister, she's really good. She's a really good person. She's like the epitome of good people. And sometimes I'm just not very nice to her, nice back.
Okay.
I
So
can be
you-
very, very mean.
Okay. And so she's nice and kind,
Yeah, she's deserving.
and you're not?
No, that's not very nice to do. I mean, I am, but I'm not, I guess, at my core. Or so I think.
Well, it's a core connection that we
Yeah.
need to try to undo, right? Because
Right.
everything just keeps fueling it. And you're at a really good place now. Getting out of that kind of addiction is not easy, right? Like that is a very difficult place. But it also started here. I mean, how many addicts do you think of themselves this way?
All. I would say at least 99%.
Yeah. And so, you know, we talk about, you know, gateways to addiction, you know, negative thoughts, trauma, that's what, you know, and addiction, the problem with addiction is it works, right? It works. And then it just feeds into, well, I've done, you know, I've chosen this. And so therefore it confirms that I'm a bad person. And so getting out of this is amazing. Okay. But some of those patterns are still there, right? Because, you know, something happens and you really keep going back to this. And so how can we... So now we have these separated. How much do you think the addiction is still impacting you? Like the actual physical addiction?
Like what it did to me and the fact that I was addicted.
No, I mean, like, do we need to address anything here now? Or are we going into the core stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's 13 years.
This is, right,
Good.
so we're going to say stable, okay? Because this is what's great about the identify and organize is, yes, we have this, but this is not what we're focusing on right now because we've been stable for 13 years. Now we're going deeper, you know, and, you know, getting into some of the nitty gritty of what happened. So you feel like the spiritual conflict is at a good place. You pray, you kind of try to focus on gratitude. You're continuing to work on that spiritual relationship.
Yes.
You have a plan to be able to help people with trauma. But you did say a couple negative things, like in the beginning, like, I don't know if I'll be able to.
Right.
And so that, and I want you to, in the next couple years, as you're going through training and working here and stuff, there's two sides to that. There is I choose it because I'm comfortable in trauma, and I'm actually not really working on my own trauma, but I'm just feeding that fight or flight in myself by hearing other people's stories, or I'm truly healed, and I'm teaching people how to heal. Oftentimes, and this is what I think happens sometimes in talk therapy, of like someone comes in and then the counselor's just kind of receiving it, and there's no actual plan for processing it to release it. So what kind of things have you done to try to process and release?
Well, with this one, I thought I was really good with it until what happened with my child. So like I really thought I was past it, but then it happened with my child. So I've gotten very overprotective of her. So that's kind of what I'm attempting to do now with that.
Well, and even though it was her trauma, it is a new trauma. Remember, you know, when something happens to our child, as a mother, that becomes ours, right? And so it's not that you didn't do anything, it's that now we have another trauma to process. And like, we're supposed to protect our children, and you weren't able to protect her, right? So that feeds into the shame and guilt. Did you make a decision?
And the weak.
And being weak.
Yeah.
And then ultimately this core connection that you really have to work on, right? These are easier to work on. The negative thoughts, like, I could get you to say 10 positive things about yourself, and it kind of decreases the power of some of these. But if we don't, this one goes deep, And, I think you're at a level where it's time to start decreasing this. The reality is I've been working on myself for 20 years. My core connections are still my core connections, but the negative thoughts I can get rid of fairly quickly. The core connections are like a smoldering fire. I can, keep it low and down, or if I'm having a bad day, I can, put fuel on it, right? And so, making that conscious decision that I'm not going to feed into that button. I know what it is, and I'm not going to react to it. And not from external validation, but from internal validation, start working on, I am good. So give me some I am good statements. And, anything around that concept. And it can't be external validations. It can't be, things that you have accomplished. It has to be on the inside.
Oh, that's going to be hard. You're making this so hard.
This is, the thing is when I'm working with someone who has done a lot of self-work, it's not, it's time to go deep.
Okay. See, with these, I agree with you, because I can combat those often.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man. Internal, though. Like, give me an example.
I love animals. I love children. I cherish, people. I care about people.
Okay. I want to help people.
Okay. Right. And so you see how this is opposite of a bad person. Bad people don't want to help other people.
Right. Okay. I like doing things without I like doing good things without the recognition. I'm just trying to get you to write as much as you can. And of course, everybody loves animals and kids, so that just
Not
goes
everybody.
away. Yeah, that's true. Those are the ones we don't like. No.
So why, you had talked a little bit in your map about sometimes you're mean. Why are you mean?
I have a temper. I don't know why I have a temper. I mean, because I get triggered.
Mm-hmm.
I get triggered at...
Triggers cause you to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more like a lashing out.
A lashing out and overcompensating for... Like if I'm mean first, then you can't be mean to me.
Mm-hmm. So it's a protection.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be mean, right? You like to do good things without recognition.
Yeah.
So, but then you're mean, you overcompensate, you're mean, then it triggers this, shame and guilt, which just feeds right back into that core connection, right? So what can you do when you know you're about to be mean? Sometimes, it's always the people that are closest to us too. Like my husband gets the brunt of mine, right? Because he's right there.
We're safe with them.
They're safe, yeah. A lot of times we choose to do it to the people that, like you said, your sister, like she doesn't deserve it. She's super sweet to you.
But I know she's not going nowhere.
She loves you and she's not going anywhere, right?
Yeah. So I could take 3 seconds and think before I speak, which is something I often tell my patients.
Yeah. We have to practice what we preach.
Right.
Absolutely. And just remember that it's about all this other stuff. It's not really about, and then we're going to mess up. We have to forgive ourselves too. And that's something that I want you to work on. Grace for yourself. Because you let everything trigger this. And this is a pretty ugly core connection. And it's not actually who you are.
Okay. I'll take
Easier
it for now.
Easier said than done. I know. And then, like you said, you're working on yourself. You've been doing this stuff. You know how to talk yourself out of this.
Like, I'm good at my affirmations.
Yeah. And you've been working on this, right? Just now being able to separate these things. And then so you said you did some stuff with your childhood trauma. Did you go through like professional therapy? Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
And any specific techniques?
CBT, yeah.
CBT and stuff. Okay. One of the things that I like to talk about is movement. So the way things get out of the body is through movement. And we always talk about EMDR, and EMDR is great as a way to move trauma out of the body. But you can actually do it in several ways. There's trauma-informed yoga, somatic yoga. There's just going for an intentional walk of, like, I'm going to release this and think about this and release this and allow myself to cry. I've done things, punching a punching bag to get some of the top layer anger out before I can actually do that. And movement can be music, but thinking it intentionally of, I'm listening to this music, it's causing a vibration, and I'm attempting to move that through the body. There's also, energy practitioners that do things like that. Scripture's even talking about like hands-on therapies to move things out of the body. So the way in which we process is through movement. It's not, this is why a lot of people love exercise. Oh, exercise is my therapy. Well, that's great. I don't really like to exercise. I have to make myself exercise. So I had to find things that were movement that allowed me to process and move them out of the body. And so just think about that, and you have to process this one too, even though it's not yours. Our children are a biological extension of us. And then you had all of those things, and this was your biggest fear.
Biggest.
Right.
And I'm in avoidance on that one. I'm just like keeping everything in. Yeah.
Okay. And
Definitely.
so you're still seeing somebody for therapy and stuff?
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to do EMDR on that one.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of the emotional damage it's caused. We can't obviously get rid of it, but the way we have to process and release it to get rid of that emotional damage that it's causing. So you have a plan.
Okay. Yeah.
You have a plan. Anything else you want to?
No, I like how you broke this down better. I'm just.
Any questions you have?
It's when I'm doing the thought map.
On yourself or someone else?
Either.
Okay.
Either it's getting, a lot of it is getting to the core connections, and then breaking it down like this. Like, because this, remember how core connections, I did that? That's what I keep doing.
Okay. Yeah. Anything you can talk yourself out of is usually a negative thought. After time, you'll be able to talk yourself out of this, but you see how you couldn't even initially answer the question?
Yeah.
Because it's deep. It goes very deep, and your life has been reinforcing it. And when we believe something, our life can reinforce that, right? And I see that so often in addiction, right? That we're just reinforcing this, belief that we're a bad person. And then just keeping those things separated and not letting them get all meshed together. This is going to take time. This, I think you could probably say 6 or 8, but you could talk yourself down to a 3 or 4 with your affirmations and things like that.
Yeah, no, thanks for doing this with me. I appreciate it.
Any questions on how it relates to working with others?
No.
Okay, yeah. See how when we make ourselves do it on ourselves, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, now I know how to help everybody.
It's just going to trigger me every time I do it with somebody else.
Well, and what I do is when I get triggered at work, obviously we keep it together.
Yeah.
But make sure you go home and put it in its appropriate category, and what are you doing about it? These things are going to take time, right? You can't just, you get triggered here and you go, oh, okay, but you might need to take 20 minutes a night to like let some of that release, like we talk about with the soda can or the teapot, right? Like if we keep it closed, you're just going to explode. And that's probably what happens when you're mean. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make you a bad person.
Okay. That was
Okay?
good. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Yes.